Thanks for joining us at Awaken the World. I am excited to have this conversation today. Today, we are in conversation with Elliott Curtis discussing his journey of awakening. So, welcome, Elliott.
Thanks, Leo. I appreciate it, man. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited that this is getting going.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I know, we've had some conversations in the past, so I know a little bit about your journey. And I think that from some of those conversations, there's just some really great pieces to it, and your ability to express them, and your ability to express and really share in a vulnerable and a complete way. I think what you've gone through, I think really has the ability to help and potentially impact people. So I'm really super excited to bring you on today and go through this. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go for it. Let's share
Okay.
some stories.
Yeah. Let's share some stories. Okay. And can we set the intention at the outset then, Elliot, and tell me if you're cool with this? That we'll dive into things. I'll kind of probe and ask all along the way, and my guiding intention would be just that we come to it as raw and as open and as real as possible, so that we can really kind of communicate from that deepest essence of truth and who we are at our core being, without any restrictions or without any kind of critiquing in our minds, or what will people think about this, that type of thing. So, does that sound
Yeah,
good? Is that fair to you?
that sounds perfect. Yeah. No judgment, no self-judgment.
Exactly.
I
Okay.
got no room for that.
Dig it. And just so the world sees there, his world. Do you mind holding that up as we get started here? Your
Oh,
little mug,
well,
world's best mom. Dig it. So you're over. Where are you at, Elliot?
I'm in Surrey in the UK, so it's just south of London.
Okay.
Uh, well, currently at a friend's house looking after a dog.
Okay. Okay.
At this
So
part of the world,
I wanted to kick off by, I think it's always kind of interesting as we look at, telling a story, kind of starting at the end, right?
yeah.
As opposed to kind of starting at the beginning and working through all these linear steps, which we can kind of get lost along the way a little bit. Let's kind of start at the end with where you are now, and then kind of back into some pieces and let that kind of flow from there. So, do you mind kind of sharing with us two things really to kind of kick that off? Number one being, give us kind of a frame of your awakening journey in totality at this point, in terms of how long you feel like it's been kind of going on. And then also to kind of just where you are right now, just in the world, with your being, with your sense of self, kind of how do you feel about yourself? How do you feel about things going on? Just how comfortable do you feel in your own skin at this point?
Yeah. So I guess in the first part of the question, I feel like my awakening journey has been going on for too long.
Okay.
But I've come to accept that I think the awakening journey is probably infinite. That we're always awakening to higher degrees and expanding our awareness and consciousness and sense of self and being. And that it's potentially never going to end. So, it's been a long time, but I'm cool with that. It might be eternally longer as well. But in terms of where I am, like just myself in life, I'm really good. Like I'm probably the happiest, most contented, peaceful, appreciative, loving, and open version of me than I've ever been in my life. Um, and don't get me wrong, like I have ups and downs, some good days and bad days, like everybody. Sometimes I get a bit lost in my mind and freak out about things, and then other days, I'm back and I'm I'm cool again.
Right.
But as an overall like base level of how I feel and just my general being, like I feel great. I feel good. I feel comfortable in my skin. It um for so much of my life in my past, and maybe I didn't recognize it so much maybe growing up. Like as kids we're not so aware, but as we start maybe our adult life, you like, yeah, found myself in some really deep dark times of anxiety and depression and suicidal thoughts and questioning life and just never really feeling at peace or at ease, feeling like something's missing.
Mm.
And don't get me wrong, I still have like desires and things I'd like to do or maybe achieve in the world and goals, but there's not this sense of desperation that things have to happen, or I have to be somewhere, or I have to become something in order for me to feel like at peace or like at ease in myself, and just to be able to like enjoy being. Um,
How is that feeling? That feeling of being at peace and at kind of ease with yourself, and contrast that with kind of what it was beforehand, right? When that wasn't there.
oh man, it's black and white. Like it's it's night and day.
Yeah.
Um, it's hard. I don't know. How would I describe it? Um, I guess in if we start with it like in the in contrast, then I I remember myself as someone who was, you know, constantly seeking something, constantly searching for something, but
Mm.
never knowing what it was, what it is I was really looking for. You know, was it money? Was it fame? Was it fortune? Was it love? Was it, I don't know. Like I knew there was something missing from my life. And without it, it's kind of I don't know, I just was just always be in a state of panic. Kind of like, I don't know, imagine maybe it's I wouldn't know for sure, but if I had to imagine, I don't know, it's maybe if say you're going out of the house and you know it's like you have the thought, did I leave, oh no, did I leave like the stove on, like is the
Yeah.
fire on? And then you go back and you're like, oh no, it wasn't the stove, it's fine. So you're like, okay, I can leave now. But you go out again and you're like, oh, did
Oh,
I leave the doors unlocked? And you go
right.
back and check the doors unlocked. But there's always something, you're just like just panicking about something, and you don't
Yeah.
really know what it is or why you're panicking, but you just can't settle, you just can't relax. And to go through every day just with this kind of niggling sense in the back of you that's like, oh, something's amiss, something's not right. Like, what is it? Like, it's really hard because you're just always on edge. Like, you can't really breathe properly. You can't really relax. You can't
Mm,
really enjoy, you know, being, you know, conversations you have with people or watching a movie or the sport you play. You're never really present in the moment because your mind is always like somewhere else or worrying about something.
yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, so in comparison, now I think that's it. It's this increased sense of presence in like the moment, and just being very here and now, and not, you know, regretting past things or feeling shame or guilt from like something in the past or worrying about something that's happening in the future. It's just very much like I'm here, what's going on? Like it's all good, it's cool. Like I can
Yeah.
I can enjoy the now.
Yeah.
Um, and that's all
That
we got of it. If we can't enjoy now, like we're just, yeah, life's hard.
Yeah. So okay, so that gnawing sense, right? So pre kind of current state, that gnawing sense that something's incomplete, or I still need to, there's something out there that's missing, or I still need to do this, or I still need to become this or whatnot. Versus now, how much energy do you think went into that previous state? Like how much of your mental, your psychic, your being essentially was consumed in that?
Oh, yeah, so much. Um, all of it. All of it,
Yeah.
basically. I mean, we we just I felt like I was using the necessary, for example, like energy or focus required to do what I felt I had to do. If I was, for example, when I was at university and having to do some studies, or when I was at work and I had to do what I had to do to get the work done, to get the paycheck, just like the necessities of life.
Mm,
But apart from that, you know, putting the bare minimum of like what I had to do in these certain situations, the rest of my, you know, focus or energy was like basically ultimately completely consumed by this, I don't know, longing for something else that I didn't know what it was. And then thinking, I don't know, analyzing my life and thinking about what I'm doing or the future and other stuff, and just mass chaos in my mind.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, can you share with us just if there were feeling words that come to mind of the current state? So as much of that is now removed, right, and where you are presently in the space you're able to embody presently, what does that feel like if you're trying to communicate that to somebody that hasn't even started the journey?
Um, this, as I say, this is funny. It sounds very much like, you know, if you go to, you look at like the gurus or the spiritual teachers, and they're talking about bliss and peace. Like I
Right.
feel like I'm going to be saying that, but it's not even that. Like I just find like I'm finding more of that peace, bliss, serenity, joy, fulfillment, um, contentment.
Mm.
Yeah, those are the feelings that come to mind.
And is it for you, is it is it these, like, are you just bouncing off the walls with energy and with joy all the time, or is it just this just kind of abiding peace, this kind of like a still water, like a still water of peace? Or how does it come through for you?
Um, I'm, how want to describe it? I guess there's kind of like, I describe it as like the two components of me in a way. There's like a more sort of central part of myself and a more, I don't know, outer part of myself.
Mhm.
And while I'm out in the world doing things and getting involved in life, certain stuff happens, there's incidents, we might have a little freak out or a panic or I don't know, day-to-day things or like whatever's going on. But nothing bothers me ever like as much as it used to. I can go about, my days, and if I have what people call problems or what I like to call, just situations now or
Yeah.
challenges, I approach life in a much more um I don't know, like more like a game in a way. Like if you're playing a video
Hmm.
game,
Yeah.
um, yeah, like you've got, I don't know, challenges or quests, so you got to fight people. And it's like, oh, it gets a bit chaotic at times, but you're playing a game, so it's like fun challenges rather than feeling like it's so much life or death
Yeah.
uh, all the time. And it's like every little thing is like, oh, could be the end of the world. And so by doing so, like it just my internal feeling is this kind of more stillness and peace where it's like no matter what happens on the game, I know I'm not in the game. I'm sitting here on the sofa playing the game. So even if, say I'm playing in GTA or Call of Duty, my character dies or something goes terribly
Mhm.
wrong, I'm like, don't worry, it's cool. Like I'm still sitting here on the sofa, cushy.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's that like ability to play the game, but yeah, with a more of a sense of like, yeah, fun and curiosity and yeah, just not taking life so seriously, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So talk to me about, you had mentioned as we kind of kicked off this part of the conversation that there are still those moments, right, where you kind of revert back, it feels like, or get sucked back into old patterns or old thinking, or, get triggered by something where you're back into that experience, back into old experiences or back into old ways of reacting or old patterns or old consciousness, right? So talk to me a little bit about what that looks like for you now when you do slip into one of those moments, and what is your thought process, like how do you get yourself out of it? When does the awareness kick in that you're back into it? Kind of, if you can, as much as you can unpack that, I think that's a really helpful means to share with people of, hey, more and more and more you'll get to this place where you get back to your center, you get back to your core more quickly, right? You don't get lost in it for weeks at a time or months at a time or even days at a time, or, it kind of becomes where it's more like seconds or minutes or hours or maybe the day, but then the next one, so talk to me a little bit about that part.
Yeah. Um, so maybe probably best if I use an example, which I imagine a lot of people could probably relate to is say like financially.
Okay.
Um, when a lot of people maybe panic or worry maybe the most about money in their lives. One of people's like biggest worries,
Yeah.
causes of like problems. And say if we don't have enough money or something goes wrong, we got to fix the house, there's a problem with the car, or we lost our job or whatever it might be. And we're worrying like, oh my God, how am I gonna pay the bills, or put food on the table, or fix this thing, or survive basically? And we think it's the end of the world, and we're freaking out, we're panicking.
Yeah.
Uh, I do the same thing. Like especially because now I don't like and for ages, like I haven't worked a consistent like job. The sort of sporadic work here or there. Try and do more things that interest me or when stuff pops up. And so sometimes I have money and sometimes I don't have money. And the times where, the money's running low and I might get into that place again where I get like really sort of attached to this idea, the thoughts floating around my mind of like, oh no, money's running low. You know, where's the next bit of money going to come from, or the job, and how am I going to feed myself, and there's other stuff, and then there's this all kind of like freaking out. And it can that state of like freaking out and panic and fear used to last, you know, long periods of time, could go on for, you know, days, weeks, months, you know, at a time when I was, for example, in, you know, deep like depression and anxiety.
Sure.
But sort of as this time gone on and done a lot of work, like the periods sort of get like shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And I think just through developing just a higher level of like self-awareness, just being aware of the current emotional state that I'm in, I'm then able to like recognize just how I'm feeling in my body and what sort of thoughts are floating around my mind, and whether they're actually conducive and useful to my life and my situation, or doing things or achieving things. Because what I've come to realize is so much of our life, like the majority of our life, is driven by subconscious factors and subconscious behaviors.
Sure.
Most of the time we think we're in control and in charge of all the things we're saying and doing and, you know, whatever, but so much is habitual. It's like mechanical. It's ingrained into us. Uh, and we're not actually in, you know, direct control of all that stuff in the moment. And I learned that depending on our current and present emotional state, that will be reflected in the way that we approach life and situations and people in the world. And so when we get caught in these, you know, negative thinking loops and spirals and anxiety attacks, and, you know, it's, I do it up here because it's in the mind, but it also, we feel it in the body then as well. Like there's this tenseness, there's these, you know, like, you know, feelings in our body, like the thoughts and the feelings, they're linked, it's the same. And when we have that awareness to be like, oh, I'm feeling this way because I'm thinking these thoughts and all this stuff, and none of it's really happened yet. All of this stuff I'm worrying about is some potential future, one of maybe infinite potential futures that I've just latched my mind onto. And now I'm like thinking and feeling that it's real. And so I'm like living it in my mind and my body, and it's giving me a really hard time. But understanding that like there's not necessarily any truth to that. Like the future could go any particular way. Like, how do I not know? Like, I'm talking like from a financial perspective, how do I not know I'm gonna like receive a call from someone who's like, oh no, this might be a bit morbid, but someone in your family's passed away and you're getting a bunch of inheritance.
Yeah.
Congratulations. You just, you know, you got £100,000.
Yeah.
Or, you know, someone's, you know, contacts me because they're looking for more landscaping work or dog sitting. I just don't know what the future's going to bring. And so by doing what I feel I definitely used to do a lot of, and might be the same for a lot of people, but by assuming the negative or getting so latched onto these thoughts of fear and worry and anxiety, we're constantly, living in a really uncomfortable state in that moment, but then also, in a sense, creating those undesirable futures for ourselves. Because if we're in panic mode, freaking out mode, and fear mode, we behave differently than if we're in, you know, relaxed, joyous, you know, positive, like happy mode. Like if I were freaking out, you know, about life, and, you know, I'm like, I got bills to pay, I got stuff to do. Like I'd be like, yeah, I can't do this call. I got to go figure stuff out. I got to get places. I got to make things happen. And so I'm denying myself of potential opportunities for, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Abundance, happiness, joy, success, wealth, like, you know, health, these things. And therefore I'm attracting more negative stuff into my life, and aligning myself with this like negative future that I've built up in my mind, because I'm staying in this state and this condition that will make me continuously behave in ways that essentially make those things happen. And so when I realized that, like I said, that's kind of how life is always being shaped, that we are behaving in ways in accordance with like our emotional and intellectual states of mind.
Mhm.
Um, that like just how valuable it is to develop a high level of self-awareness, to be able to constantly reflect and be like, how am I feeling right now? Like, am I feeling good, or am I feeling like I'm freaking out? And if I'm, feeling good, great, nothing to worry about. Keep going on with life. If I'm freaking out, feeling guilty, shameful, whatever it is, what kind of thoughts are going through my mind? What kind of ideas am I entertaining? And how valid is all of this mental stuff going on up in my head? Is there any truth behind any of it? Um, Sometimes we convince ourselves, it's all true.
Mhm.
But, when we can kind of take a step back in a more, sort of holistic, perspective, we can pick them apart and assess and dissect it and be like, oh, maybe it's not so true. And I guess this whole different process people go through to do that. Therapy, for example, one of them, or I don't know, loads of spiritual practice and stuff too. But then I don't know. Yeah, I think, through doing that, just in the moments where I do catch myself freaking out, uh, I can quite quickly recognize, oh, my mind is just like running away with itself again, and it's just coming up with all this nonsense that's making me freak out and just isn't going to be useful to me. And then I have, yeah, maybe my own practices or things that I do to bring myself back to a level head, level place of mind, good feeling, and then go about my day. And all of the things that I thought I was worrying about and freaking out about just don't happen. They don't come true. And I was like, our mind is just creates so much nonsense some of the time.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
yeah.
So two questions on that I want to try and weave together. And feel free to answer them however you want. But the first would be, how did you get to a place where you knew that the ability to witness, so the ability to not be consumed by the thought, consumed by the emotion, but to actually take that step away from it and kind of observe yourself almost as like a third party, right? So, what triggered that for you, or how did you get to that? And then the second question, and if this is too much, let me know and we'll break them apart. But the second question would be then, as you now kind of have this awareness, what mechanics or tools do you use, or what things have you developed for yourself that when you start to feel yourself slide into kind of over towards the feelings that you don't want to embody, or the experiences you don't want to have, or you kind of become aware, you're 4 hours into it and you're like, oh shit, I've just been just kind of racing internally with all this fear and shame or guilt or whatever it is. What are
Yeah,
your mechanics to kind of orient yourself back to equipoise, to back to that core, back to that center?
cool. So the first part, my developing this, more self-awareness really started, I want to say maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It's just before COVID. I was in Australia,
Hmm.
and I'd always been very interested in like the mind and um how to describe it? I don't know, some more like esoteric concepts and whatnot. But yeah, in terms of self-awareness, yeah, I definitely didn't really have any. Basically, I was in Australia about 5 years ago. I was on a working holiday out there. I was with a couple of sisters at the time as well, and some work out there. And I went to this it's like a conference somewhere on the Gold Coast. It's like a business internet marketing conference. I met some people having a good time. And while I was there, the next day there was a like group meditation class
Hmm.
that some people were going to. And I was like, oh, I've never meditated before. That sounds interesting. Let's give it a go. And so we sit down, and it's a guided meditation. So there's this woman at the front, walking us all through it. And I'm just sitting there like with my eyes closed and breathing and thinking like, am I doing this right? Like, what am I supposed to be doing? Like, what even is meditation? I feel like I'm
Right.
just sitting doing nothing. Um, and then at the end, she opens it up to like a discussion for the group, and she was like, how was your experience? What is your experience? How did you feel? And I didn't put my hand up because I was like, I don't really know what to say. What did you guys think? Um, and there's people sharing their stories, and they were like, I felt like I was in a different world, and I, had these visions, these colors, and I was like, what the hell? Like, are you seeing things in your mind and all this other stuff's going on? And it's like, I'm just here, like just with myself and my thoughts and what like Um, and it got me really, I didn't know what was going on. I thought they were a bit crazy, but it just got me really fascinated. I was like, how can I have like visions in my mind and, cool stuff? I was like, I want that. So around the time when COVID started, I I was living back at home with my family home, and I started doing meditations. Um, just like little 5 minute, 10 minute ones, little guided meditations here and there. Didn't really know why. I was just interested and was like, I don't know, apparently it's good for mental health and relaxing. And as I started doing it, it's when I first became aware of like how much our mind is racing all the time. Like it's just nonstop. Let's go, 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 go. There's thought, there's another thought, there's another thought, there's another thought, there's another thought. And it's racing. And when we're out in the world and we're talking to people and we're doing stuff and we're engaged in things, we don't we don't really hear the noise and the thoughts because we're distracted, like doing stuff. But when we're sitting there and we're quiet and we're still, that's when it gets really loud. And that's why a lot of people have like a lot of difficulty meditating because they're like, it's just too much. It's like if there's people around you all the time just saying stuff and you're just like, I gotta get away. And so you have to go do things.
Yeah.
And as I was learning a bit more about meditation and principles and why it's good to meditate to like relax the mind and to learn how to what was I doing? Like detach from like reacting emotionally to thoughts. So as I was like doing more of it and realized that yeah, a bunch of thoughts come into my mind, and some of it's like nonsense. When you just sit like with yourself and your thoughts, you're like, what is my mind doing? Like, where is it going? Where are these thoughts coming from? Some like some sensible stuff, some logical things. You think about dinner, like, what am I gonna do for dinner? What's all this other stuff, and then some like I don't know crazy things, and you're like, oh, like if pigs could fly, and oh, which, and then I don't know, maybe your mind goes to like some you know more sinister places, and it bounces around, it just goes everywhere. I'm like, my mind is chaotic. um, but what I started to notice was how uh, the longer I spent entertaining or certain thoughts and ideas in my mind, my body would start to feel differently. So if I'm focused on, positive, happy, exciting things, like I feel good, it's great. But as soon as my mind takes a turn to a different direction and it spirals off in that way, like I just start to feel bad or cold, and that's when it gets hard. And then there was like different practices that I learned to be able to, when I don't know, when there's specific undesirable thoughts that come into my mind, learning how to detach and let go and let them float away. That I can then like restore my sense of like balance inside myself and return to like peace and feeling good. Um, and so over the last 4 years, I've been doing it more and more and more and more to the point where I don't meditate a huge amount anymore. Just there's certain times where if I feel like I really want to do it. Um, but like a few months ago, I was in Costa Rica, and I'd like every morning I'd wake up and do like 45 minutes or an hour, just because starting my day with just like rebalancing myself and calming the mind and getting it to a good place before I get on my day was just super useful to me. And yeah, just not letting it always be like running away and distracted all the time.
Was there, just
Um,
real quick, Elliot, on that piece, for anyone that's hasn't started meditating or is thinking about it or has tried it, their mind's just too crazy and they just don't feel like that they can ever get to a place of where it's quiet. How long did that take you from the time where you were starting meditating and kind of working through all the feelings of, oh, this is never going to work, or I can't do this, my mind's just too crazy? How long did that take you to kind of move to a place where you're like, oh, maybe it does
mm,
work?
I I mean, after a few weeks, I could see how it could work,
Okay.
like how it could be useful. Not that I could just sit there, that I thought I could just sit there for ages and I'm like, oh, this is bliss. It's taken like years, a few years to get to the point where I actually really enjoy meditating and just sitting and being, still and quiet. And it's just like, um, I don't know, you just find this calm, beautiful place inside yourself that's like, I don't know, just heaven. And sometimes I'm like, I could just stay here forever. But I'm like, oh no, there's people in the world who kind of want to see me, and I'll go spend some time with them. Um, but yeah, maybe after a few weeks, as I just little by little, just noticing like tiny tiny changes, tiny improvements in, like, first of all, my ability to try and like sit without thought. So to like just sit there and be like, all right, breathe, focus on my breath, and like just calm and quiet. Like the amount of time that it takes before a thought pops into my mind might have been like 2 seconds. I was like,
Mm.
oh, I'm gonna see if I can do like 3 seconds, and I'm trying to get a bit longer and longer. And as I just gradually noticed maybe that time increasing a bit, where I could maintain a more still, calm, balanced mind without it just fucking going chaotic. Um, it yeah, gave me a sense of like hope or optimism that I could, I don't know, I didn't really know what I was trying, where I was hoping it was going to take me,
Mm.
but it just felt good. Um, being able to just have moments, even if it was like 5 seconds, right? Where you can sit without thought, without chaos in your mind, like
Yeah.
5 seconds of absolute peace. Like if there's anyone watching this and they've never had that or meditated, like just to be able to get to that point, is phenomenal. You will love it.
It's,
Um,
as the Course in Miracles says, right? A tranquil mind is not a little gift, right? Like a
yeah,
peaceful, a tranquil mind, a still mind, like still water, that is not a little gift.
it's the greatest gift.
Yeah.
The greatest gift. And even if it's only 2 seconds, but like, because if someone's watching this and they're like, right, I'm going to try and meditate, they sit there and automatically their mind's racing and then they cannot even get a second of like peace in their mind. Um, when you just do it a few times and you breathe and you follow some guided ones and just getting to that point, like it's like it's like the healthiest drug like you could you could ever experience. And once you've tasted a little bit of that bliss of peace and serenity and silence in just a short bit of a quiet mind, like you're gonna want more and more and more. And then it carries on. And I think it's just such a good practice then for it's like a muscle, like exercising, like they say at the gym, like exercising any muscles. When you go and work out for like half an hour at a time each day, or could be an hour or whatever. But then the developed strength in the muscle, you're then able to apply to the things you're doing for the rest of the day. So the the ability to calm and relax your mind in your 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes of daily meditation practice is then going to be translatable into, say, the rest of the day. And when you're out and about doing stuff, you're just going to notice yourself feel just a little bit, maybe day by day, a little bit calmer, a little bit more peaceful. Like stuff that used to make you react loads and freak out and make your mind go crazy, it's just not quite as crazy anymore. Not quite as crazy. As time goes on, then you get to a point where it's like it's can be really difficult to find anything in the world that really makes you, freak out or go crazy. And it's wonderful because like there's stuff that happens, and my, friends or family, people I know, they're like, Bradakin, it's like it's the end of the world. Watch out. And I'm like, oh, it's not that bad. Don't worry about it. It's gonna be
Like Abraham
fine.
says, right? There's nothing serious going on here.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's, we live in a beautiful age, don't we? Where, if you don't feel like you can just sit down and get yourself to stop thinking and to quiet your thoughts. I remember when I first tried meditating, I wasn't trying to use anything and my thoughts were just so crazy. I was like, how in the hell is this ever going to happen? But at this
Yeah.
beautiful age that we live in, where there are guided meditations, there's tons of apps on the, that you can download. There's all kinds of binaural beat programs which seem to be really effective at bringing the mind and bringing the brain and entrancing a certain brainwave state that can help us get to that place so that we can start to kind of carve out that groove, so we can find that place and then find it again and find it again and find it again, to where it kind of becomes this repeated, like the muscle that you mentioned. Yeah.
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 What were you gonna say?
Nope. I was waiting for you.
What I would add briefly is I think anybody watching this that is does struggle, for example, with whether it's mental health or anxiety or depression or um any sort of mental unwell being. I don't know if there's a word. um, is that I like to point out just how detrimental um social media has been like in my life, and how learning how to have a healthy relationship with that, how important that has been to finding mental stability.
Mm.
Because this world that we live in now, where everyone's just on their phones all the time, there's constant stimulation. There's like, look at me, marketing, someone doing like a little dance on TikTok, someone doing something else, like always things going on. Like I might like we like and it's just constantly keeping us distracted. And most people, instead of ever taking time to be with themselves, you
Mm-hmm.
know to just sit and not watch the TV and just have a cup of tea and breathe and listen to the wind, um for example, or just in silence, or to
Yeah.
be with themselves. Like no one does that, even when they go to the toilet. Like I remember, for like up until, I don't know when it was, maybe like a couple of year or two ago, like I couldn't go to the toilet without my phone. Like you got to have something to do while you're sitting on the toilet. Like you can't just sit there and take a dump. um, um, and yeah, it just goes to show just how, like, I don't know, maybe how afraid so many people are of their minds, or what's good, like what's lurking inside there, what's going to come up, and which is
Mm-hmm.
why people always need to distract themselves. But the fact of the matter is, like, the demons can never be overcome unless we face them, unless we take time to like sit with them and be with the thoughts and the discomfort, to really, I don't know, to feel it, to assess it, to work with it, to move past it. And yeah.
That's a perfect setup and perfect segue for the next part of the conversation of talking about the demons. So let's take a
Oh,
real
nice.
quick break and then we'll jump into that part. Okay.
Nice one. Okay, cool.
All right. So we're back after a little break there. And really quick before we kind of dive into talking about the demons and the darkness, right? I wanted to just make sure that we really put a pin in this part of, what mechanics do you use, Elliot, when you find yourself, in a moment where you're spinning out or where you've gone unconscious or unaware, and it takes you, and then you kind of snap to it and you're like, oh shit, I've just been unconscious for the last 4 hours. I've just been lost in this maze of, thoughts pummeling me. Like, what mechanics do you use to get yourself back to that place of balance?
Hmm. Great question. I think I've probably tried loads of different things unintentionally. Um, just because, as I don't know, when we find ourselves in those moments, like, and we're kind of freaking out, sometimes it's like you're out swimming and you're struggling to stay afloat, and you'll do whatever you can to try and get to the top of the water. So yeah, I've probably done loads of things, but I think I found that I probably have a bit of a process now, if I think about it, which is uh step one, just recognizing when I'm spiraling a bit, when the mind's starting to go, and that comes from really just being a bit more in tune with my body and saying, like, how does my body feel? Like, do I feel good? I feel light, or I'm like tense, I'm like anxiety, like I'm a panic, like. And if I'm not feeling good in my body, there's something going wrong. Like, that's step one. Notice, how do I feel?
Okay.
And if I don't feel great, then I ask myself, like, what's what's going on in my world right now that's not making me feel great? Why am I feeling this way? And try and connect it to something. And it might be obvious. It might be because I'm sitting here just dwelling on, some, irrational or unhelpful thoughts. Or maybe it's because I'm doing something like in life that I don't really want to be doing. And actually I want to be doing something else. I feel like I don't know, I'm on the right path in a way. Um, and either way, if I'm not sure, um, what I do know is, like, if I don't know how to solve it right there and then, I'll be like, right, well, first things first, I need to rebalance myself. And so the rebalancing will probably just be, first of all, stepping away from whatever I'm doing at the time.
Mm.
Uh, like, environment plays a huge part in, like, our physiology. And
Mm.
so just by, for example, if it's like getting out and going for a walk and you get some fresh air and you move a little bit, can completely change your state and the way that you feel. I love how Tony Robbins, for example, if anyone knows him, he uses the saying, like, motion creates emotion.
Mm.
And so even if, like, if you're spiraling or freaking out, even if you just stand there and do like 20 jumping jacks, Like
Mhm.
you're gonna start to feel better because you get some blood pumping, you're changing your state, something different's going on. It takes you, you need a moment that like just like extracts you from this, spiraling crazy war like mind, hole that you might be getting yourself into. You just got to snap out from a second, be like, whoa, and come back to like middle ground. Um, so yeah, could be going for a walk. I like I say, like to meditate, even just as something as simple as taking a few breaths for a minute, just some deep breathing. And you breathe and you stop doing what you're doing. I'm like, no, no work right now, no nothing. Nobody speak to me. Headphones in, like whatever. Just like I'm just gonna breathe and get yourself back. I like to play music as well. Music is definitely like a form of therapy for me in a way. So I have a guitar and I might like play a few songs and I sing and it just puts me into a better state of frame of mind. Um, anything I enjoy doing, anything that makes me feel good. If I just, I don't know, just in a bad place and I can get away, which I think, most of the time, if not all the time, like, I don't know, we can, unless people feel like trapped to their jobs and then they're freaking out. I'm like, right, I need to go hit a few golf balls for a little bit, take some stress out, or I don't know, could be anything.
Yeah.
Something that just, you enjoy, makes you feel good. And you don't have to be doing it for hours, but just 5, 10 minutes or something, and you just get yourself back to a level plane of mind.
Do
Is
you
that, yeah.
find, do you find, so when you started to build awareness, right, and you could start it to see, oh, I'm spiraling, right? And then kind of fast forward to where you are now. Are you at a place now where those moments of when you do notice yourself spiraling, or you've noticed you become unaware, that you have grace for yourself and that you have compassion, you just realize it as kind of part of the process? Or is it still, do you still beat yourself up when you notice that you're in one of those moments, feeling like you're failing the spiritual journey, you're not as
Yeah.
adept as you
Yeah.
thought you should be, kind of all that nonsense?
I do. Yeah, no, for sure. Like I definitely still beat myself up sometimes. Not as bad as I used to.
Yeah.
Um, because yeah, like often I think to myself, like, like I should be able to like just maintain a, level head, by now and all this stuff. But like it happens, like we're all human, it's just life. And having that, um, once we've got past it and say like in a time like now, I'm saying I'm fine, then I can look back and be like, I can laugh at myself a bit more and not condemn myself for feeling a certain way or for, for certain things happening. Um, and in the moments, when it happens, like because when we're in negative like thinking loops or spirals or whatever it is, um, ultimately any thoughts that come out of that are, usually going to be of a negative or undesirable nature, which is, could often be condemning or, like beating ourselves up in a sense as well. It's not until we get out and then I've meditated or I've played some music and I've, hit some golf balls or I've gone for a walk that I calm again. And then I'm like, I can look back and be like, you silly sausage. Like, what are you doing that for? Get all worked up. It's just a bit of life. It's just life, man. It's just things happening and we're good now. And then you can laugh about it again. But it's kind of like that analogy of just getting really absorbed, into the game or into the scary movie. And we think it's all real at the time. And when you're watching the scary movie and you scream and you're like you're terrified in the moment, but then a few seconds later, you look around and people are like laughing at you because you scream and you're like, I wasn't real.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe that's never going to go away. Maybe there's always going to be these freak out moments of life because that's kind of part of the game is like getting absorbed into it and thinking everything's such a big deal. But then, yeah, being able to, snap back for a minute and be like,
Yeah.
the big old joke, the big old game of life.
It's kind of like what Abraham talks about in terms of, they outline their different steps, and it'd be step 5 where you recognize that you're back in contrast, but you're no longer beating yourself up for it. You're not judging it, right? So are you able to experience now that those freak out moments or the moments where you do get sucked down actually end up being some of your greatest teachers, or some of the best moments where you are challenged, right? To potentially, oh, there's this other part of myself that I hadn't realized, or oh, there's another fear that's, that's hanging under the scenes, or there's another child wanting to be seen, type thing. Have you started to recognize the beauty that those moments provide?
Definitely, definitely. And that's it. Like I think that's, you say ultimately what initiates, the panic or the freak out is because there's something underneath the surface, one of these demons or traumas or a little child inside us that's, screaming or, or whatever it is um, that then once, like I say, we're out of the panic, we're level-headed again, we can look back, we can reflect, we can do a bit of, inner work or analysis just to, ask ourselves like, oh, interesting. Why did I respond to that situation that way? What was it about it that made me feel the way that I did? And like depending on our own ability to do that for ourselves, working with certain professionals, counselors, therapists, coaches, whatever it might be, that can be that mirror for us and ask good questions and help us to, um, self-reflect a bit, can be great. And then just by peeling the veil back and exposing, what those sources are, those things inside us, inside our psyche that trigger, these triggers that people call them, these certain feelings and moments, then we can start to see them, for what they really are, and I don't know, work with them and I don't know what the word is. I don't know, heal them maybe in a sense. But until they're seen, until we know what they are, we can't do anything about them. I think that's the problem is, for a lot of for a lot of people and a lot of the time, it's they keep having freak out moments. There's things that always trigger them in life, but without, doing that work to reflect and see what they are, like you can't fight a demon that you can't see.
Yeah. Have you noticed that the freakouts become progressively like less and less intense and less intense, or you're able to kind of get back to core a little bit more easy as time has gone on? Have you seen kind of a diminishment in the freakoutness or the just getting completely the rug pulled out from under you type effect?
Yeah, definitely. Let's see big examples. Yeah, I can't think of anything lately that's been like a massive worry or freak out. Um, I'm just, pretty chill with most things. Even last summer, for example, it was maybe coming up to a year ago now. I got scammed really bad out of like £17,000, and
Oh,
most of it wasn't my money. I took out I took out a big loan to do this in a big like investment. Turned out to be a huge scam. Lost all the money.
wow.
Uh, and I was definitely freaking out like over that at the start. It's like, fuck, what am I gonna do? I'm like declare bankruptcy or something, like my life is ruined and my mind's just going away, with itself. I was like, after I don't know how long it took, maybe it was like, a few days or something. I was like, I don't know. You know what? It's gonna be fine. Something's gonna work out. I don't know how, but it's gonna be okay. Um, and and then I remember like I was going on a golf trip with some of my friends and I hadn't told them yet that this happened. And I tell them the story and they're like, what? They're freaking out more than I did. They're like, what? Oh my God. Like, what are you going to do if you contacted like the fraud people and like, solicitors, and you're going to get your money back? Like, this is the end of the world. I was
Right.
like, guys, calm down. It's going to be fine. And they're like, no, it's not fine. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, you need to be doing more about this. I was like, God, like, it's okay. Like, it's just chill. And just, it was so interesting how much they were freaking out over
Mm.
something that's not even, part of their own life.
Mm.
Uh, because just these ideas just freak them out so much. Um, and then I was like, oh, maybe I should be worrying because they're worrying.
That
I was like,
projection of
no,
fear.
yeah, because they
Yeah.
project something. That's if they want to worry, they can worry. I'm not going to worry. And then, worked out in the end. I was lucky enough that my dad was able to help me out with covering some of the costs, and then just had to pay him back rather than banks back and having loads more debt and interest and other stuff. So it's okay. Like there's solutions, and life works out. But I don't know. There's this something that's just helped me so much, which I don't know whether we'll get to in this call or some other point, is just a deep belief that everything's going to be okay.
Mm.
Everything's going to work out for some crazy reason. Believing that life as a whole, or God or the universe or whatever people want to call things or life, that I don't know, that there's love for us and something's looking out for us, and it's all going to be okay in the end. Even I don't know when we die, that there's I don't know specifically what's going to happen when I die, but it's just going to be okay. Like And we don't always need to know exactly how everything's going to pan out, but it's going to be okay. Um, and some people might call that delusional,
Mm.
to assume that there's like, I don't know, it's all going to be okay when everything in the physical world around you is screaming like it's not okay. But to have a level of conscious delusion in that sense where you can just almost ignore all of that and still find a peace inside yourself is great. Like I'd rather be that a little bit delusional if it means that I'm generally more peaceful and joyous and content in life.
Yeah.
um it helps me out.
It's funny because we could get into the trap of thinking that that's delusion, right? If we compare ourselves to the world and the way that the world operates. But when we
Yeah,
come to that place, as we've talked about in the past, where you start to realize, like, holy fuck, it's not me that's delusional. It's like all of this shit out there that's going on. That's
exactly,
the delusion, to where then you can
exactly.
really start to say, well, no, wait, it's kind of like, again, back to Abraham, what they say, like feeling good. You're supposed to feel like it's okay to feel good. Like life is about feeling good. Like, why do we think that that's a bad thing or a wrong
Yeah,
thing?
yeah.
And yeah,
And that's such a shift in itself from being a person who thought, to just be able to believe, almost a nonsensical idea that it's all going to work out, it's all going to be okay, to not have to, have a logical reasoning for everything and just believe, just to be
yeah,
able to believe. I was like, that's nonsense. But now I'm like, that is the greatest gift in the world. And believing it's all going to work out, it's all going to be okay. It's all beautiful. Like the world is, working for me, and it's just going to be great. Is um, like that's what I believe the truth to be now. Like that
mm,
is my truth. Whereas in comparison, um, well, and that's I don't know, sense to me. And to believe anything different, to believe that I don't know that we need to fear things, that I don't know that there's going to be hardships, that we got to suffer or whatever. Like that's delusion. Like why would we allow ourselves to entertain these torturous thought forms in our mind that cause us so much pain and so much harm? Um, but yeah, it's just a whole journey, I guess, of seeing them for what they are and overcoming them and finding the light, I suppose.
yeah. Okay, so I want to take us here in just a second into the demons and the darkness, as that's I think a part of the conversation that so often gets missed in current spirituality. But really quick before we do that, if you can put like a 1 minute maybe kind of frame on it, how did you go from the place of initially having the idea of everything's going to be okay, or in my world, I use things are always working out for me, or everything's a blessing? How did you go from just initially having that concept to where you would get buffeted around by everything still as you're trying to embody it, to where then it becomes your reality and things kind of mirror themselves around that as your core principle or your core way of being?
So,
I'm looking for a very mechanical kind of answer, like I did these kinds of practices, or I did these things, or I just kept telling myself, or I just kept reinforcing it, or like give people the way you did it if you can.
the mechanical way that I did it. How did I do it? That's the question. Um, let me just explore it for a minute and then see if something comes out. So, uh, okay, I don't know if this is exactly what you're looking for on it, but um, exploring my own philosophy of life, basically, and developing a philosophy for life, I think was the foundation. And then everything else was built upon there. I think for so many people, maybe so much of the world, like we don't know what we're doing here, why we're here, where we come from, where we're going afterwards. Like there's this whole existential panic, beneath the surface of life that most people just ignore.
Yeah.
Because they're just like, we're here, we've got to get on with it. And it wasn't until I went through a journey of exploring, my own beliefs and ideas around what I thought life is and what it's all about, dipping my toes into different religious beliefs and ideas and Eastern philosophies and constructing my own belief system of what I thought life was really about, that then I could start to form I don't know, my own, I don't know where I'm going with this. It's a really tough one. Let's take, I'll try not to like this because I could talk about this for hours, but basically, when so in like Christianity, and they say I was something to do with Jesus, God, something. It's like this faith as small as all you need is faith as small as a mustard seed. You know that saying? Mm-hmm. Like just belief, faith. I always remember like growing up, watching a lot of like Disney movies growing up, and just wanting to believe that there's like a magic to the world, or that miracles can happen, magical, amazing things can happen. You can dream big and you can accomplish it. I don't know, whatever other stuff. And I just always had this hope in a way, which was started as a hope for what I wanted, life to be. If I was like, if it's a perfect world and everything went as exactly as I want it to be, what would that look like? And to me, ultimately, it's like, that we can make miracles happen, basically. That we can believe what we want to believe and it can come true. And I don't know, it's literally just like living in a fairy tale, basically. And just by holding on to this deep-rooted desire inside me to be able to live in a fairy tale of my dreams, which sounds so childish, but I think maybe is at the core of maybe every human being is like we all just want to live in our own like fairy tale world. Maybe people might call that different things, but it's really fulfilling the child inside ourselves, like to live in this imaginary, beautiful world where anything is possible. I was like, that's just what I wanted more than anything. And so I don't know. So I just realized that in order for that to be the case, I need to maybe explore things that I, wasn't exploring before, or believe things I maybe didn't believe. And to start with, they were just, hopes. I was hoping things were true. And there's like the faith was so small, but the more I went on the journey and explored things and went through so much stuff, like the faith grew. And, this from being in one place where I can just say everything's gonna be okay, but I don't really believe it, where I'm just like, I hope it's gonna be okay. Right. To then going through a journey where it's like, I believe it a little bit more, I believe it a little bit more. And eventually, I don't know, it becomes more like ingrained in us, and to where it's just like a conviction where you're like, I know everything's gonna be okay. Yeah. And I don't know, yeah. In terms of mechanical, I don't think I can help you there because I don't know if there's I don't know what the specifics were. Maybe it's different for everyone. Do you? Can I turn that back to you? Like, do you have a do you have a mechanical process?
I would say the biggest thing and what came to mind just as you were finishing up there was just repetition. It's that process of whatever your process ends up being for yourself. It's just that repetition of repeating. So I'll take a very poignant example for myself. So I had been at one point baking bread, and I had a lot of nights to myself where I was just making bread, right? And so I started this process of programming myself with audio loops. So one of the audio loops I was programming myself with, and this was just a YouTube video I put on repeat, but it was one of Abraham Hicks' videos where she's going through and saying, things are always working out for me. Things are always working out for me. Things are always working out for me. And it repeats that for like 15 minutes in different kind of forms. But I would just play that for hours and hours and hours on end, right? And so I had that kind of coming into my mind, kind of slowly steeping, if you will, into my consciousness. And then what I started to experience is as I would be out and moving about in my world, and as things were working out for me, as I got the parking spot, or as I got this, or things just effortlessly happened, I would just reinforce to myself. I'd be like, oh, things are always working out for me. And I'd just like shout it out to the universe, So I helped, I think, kind of reinforce that a bit and just drive it a little bit deeper, ingrain it a little bit more. But I think the biggest thing is probably the awareness, the continued practice of it, and then just continuing to repeat it and look for those points where it is working out for you, where you do see the belief manifesting, where you do see it coming forward. and then continue to latch on that. And it just kind of progressively builds to where, like what you mentioned, it just becomes you. I mean, it becomes part of you. It becomes your conviction, to where it's just not even questioned anymore. It's just your mode of operating in the world.
Yeah. Did you, I'm turning this interview around a little bit. Did you
Yeah.
have people around you that supported your new belief systems and ways of wanting to be and think? Or did you find yourself quite
Uh,
alone?
No, I, to give other people fair due, I really, in a large part of my journey, it's only been recently that I've started to kind of emerge out of my shell. I just really felt like I had to go pretty inward for a number of years and really withdraw into myself. So, I probably didn't allow people those opportunities, as well as in those moments kind of earlier in the journey where I would try and express or try and share things or whatnot, and would get shut down or would get the rejection or would get the, in some cases, maybe even retaliation. It just really caused me to swing the pendulum completely the other way and just say, okay, I'm just going to go inside and just like kind of shut out the world to a degree.
Yeah. Because that's tricky, isn't it? Like when you I've done the same thing, maybe more so recently in the last sort of year, sort of affirmations and the you had a term, what did you call, you had a name for it, term for it. You don't use affirmation. You said it was like not conditioning or
Programming, maybe.
programming. Yeah, I don't know. Because yeah, sometimes people don't like the word affirmation. It sounds a bit like woo woo.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing, just reconditioning the way that the mind thinks. Sort of
It's like
beating the
repatterning yourself, reprogramming yourself.
yeah,
If you think of yourself as like an operating system, right? And that you can go in and rewrite your code. So there may be, tons of programs and codes and objects within you that are taking you in all sorts of different directions based upon how you've been raised, what you came in with, all your conditioning, society, all the rest of it. But to know that you can actually then go in and be the programmer and can start to rewrite that, can start to install the code that you want to in your operating system. And it doesn't happen all at once, right? Or otherwise you completely blow your circuits and be off the planet. But you can go back in and redo that for yourself, and progressively over time kind of continue to
yeah.
reinforce and develop those loops.
Did you have to get to a certain level of sort of self-awareness or spiritual concept, for example, to know that that was possible, that we can essentially like reprogram ourselves into different beings?
Yeah, it didn't happen in the first part of the journey for sure. It happened more, honestly, it happened with the example I just shared of the things are always working out for me, in that I'm in an experiential, I think we all are to a degree, but I have to experiment. I have to kind of get my hands in it, work in it, and all the rest of it. And so once I had done that, and it wasn't like I was consciously aware that I was doing this thing, it was like I did it, I got to the other side of it, and I was like, holy shit, this thing worked. Like in all the things that I've tried, and all these different spiritual techniques and practices, it was this very simple thing of just listening to this thing on repeat, going about my business, not even paying attention to it, just letting it seep into my being, if you will. And then as I moved out in the world, reinforcing the fact that I was seeing it manifest, and that I was seeing it come forward, and that I was starting to operate from this place. And I just, that's probably even to this day, one of my deepest practices is just how can I reprogram myself from an active and even a passive standpoint, to where then I start to operate differently in the world. So that occurred kind of mid journey ish.
Yeah, yeah. For yeah, something popped into my mind. I just wanted to make a note for anyone listening that I think to make I don't know whether it's necessarily going to speed the journey up, but I don't know, to help anyone along the journey. Like to encourage people or make people aware of just like how um I don't know, brave I think it is and commendable it is to really allow yourself to be an avid, sort of student of life itself.
Yeah.
Um to yeah, be fascinated about life and what it is and why we are here and just different principles, like, and go exploring just, from the widest parts of the world, like what is life? What is reality? What is going on? Because I think for me, I rejected that part of myself for a long time. Like I felt like I just needed to be a part of the world, doing a job, or living a certain type of life, fitting this like, model, and didn't give myself like the freedom to be like, no, like, go and explore, go and, understand, like, let yourself free. Like, if that's what you want to find out. Like, I just felt like, I don't know, what do you call it? The road less traveled or something. Like, when you embark upon this journey, it's sort of like you're walking your own path and you almost have to like leave the masses behind and you're following your own, I don't know, your own calling, this own call to adventure. Um, and yeah, there's often like a fear or a worry. It's like, should I be doing this? Because, it's not what everyone else is doing. But I think the greatest thing you can do in life is, yeah, to like when you feel that call to give yourself the freedom, the space to go and explore life. Because even, some of the stuff we're talking about now, depending on where people are in their journey, if they're like early on, right at the start, like, programming ourselves and all that stuff might seem like nonsense because they don't understand certain concepts or parts of life. But just to get fascinated about this and be like, what? Like, you can reprogram yourself and like go and explore it more and read some books and talk to people and just get excited about understanding life more, while you're also living life.
Yeah.
And, because then the more we, understand life, then the easier being in life becomes as well, I think.
Yeah. As I'll maybe pin this part of the conversation down with a final thought here, and then we'll transition over into the other piece. This just occurred for me probably 5-ish years or so ago, where I started learning that I got really clear on kind of free will and choice, and the fact that the human part, right, is given the ability to choose, and the human part is actually given the ability to guide and direct the soul, if you will, right? And so what I started to be able to piece together through that as I worked with that was saying, okay, wait a minute, I can actually talk with my soul, and I can actually instruct my soul to, the soul is kind of there in the background. And I think sometimes we operate in the impression that the soul's doing things and, kind of leading us and guiding us and taking care of everything. But when you can kind of zoom out and say, okay, wait a minute, the soul is actually waiting for our direction to do things. And when you can start to use that and you can say, okay, I'm this certain way, I recognize that I don't necessarily want to be this way, but I want to move in this direction. And I can start to work with my soul to say, soul, guide me in that way. Soul, help release these patterns that I'm holding. Soul, dissolve this. You can start to instruct your soul and you can start to command it to where it's doing on a quantum level, on the unseen level. It's doing all this energetic work for you behind the scenes that's, just magically, from our standpoint here as the human, just magically kind of making this stuff happen. And that's a part I think that's missing for in a lot of things, is this ability to talk with, interact with, command, get to know your soul, and to actually have this relationship with it that can be very thriving and dynamic and real. And your best friend that's constantly always with you, that is you, and yet is somehow also this other level of you, as to where there is this kind of, there's these two pieces of me. There's this human awareness, but then yet there's this deeper divine that I'm also, that is me, that I can work with and that I can actually instruct and that I can put to work, right? So the soul's waiting to be put to work, but we have to come to that place where we recognize that as a capability, and then we start to take advantage of that and actually utilize it.
Mm. So I have a question for you there, Leo. When you talk about the soul, like, I've never personally done much exploration into soul, what a soul is. Like, I've always been very interested in, consciousness and awareness and this idea that we are all, like a entangled, interwoven consciousness, almost split and experiencing, itself through different, human lenses and animal lenses and whatnot. But obviously I've heard people talk about soul, and we each have individual souls. But how would you describe a soul? What is a soul exactly?
Oh yeah, good. Thanks for putting me on the spot there.
Or maybe not exactly, but how would you describe what a soul
Yeah,
is in your
gosh.
finding?
This is, I think, where words start to kind of fail us, right? And that they just become more limitations than they do help sometimes. But the soul, in a very simple sense, I think, is that individual piece of the it's our God self. So it's our piece of the divinity. So it's our unique individuality that is us, that is both this human and also this divine, right? So it's the two in one that right now, as we operate in the world, we feel somewhat separate from. We've come into this pattern of conditioning that we're not divine and that we're not part of this greater existence, that we're not part of this consciousness that is everything. And so we have this separate, the way we view ourselves as this separate self. But as we can start to eradicate that, start to let that dissolve away to where we can then feel ourselves as part of existence and start to recognize that this soul is our God self, is our piece of that divinity with which we have complete autonomy and complete sovereignty with to create exactly as we want to create with. um, yeah, that's the best way I know how to describe it. It's my own unique piece of the divinity.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, on that, let's do this. Let's take a quick pause here, and in our next little bit here, we're gonna dive into demons and darkness.
Oh, nice.
Okay. Hey. So now I'm excited, Elliot, to take the conversation into a part that I feel like doesn't gets missed a lot, I think, in spirituality. And I think that for various reasons, which we may get into, but it's the darkness, it's the demons, if you will. So much of the things that we don't like about ourselves, the things that we think people think about us, the traumas, all of it gets kind of disassociated and pushed into our unconscious or our darkness, that part that we don't ever want to look at, right? That if we can just keep it in the closet in the dark and it doesn't rear its ugly head, we never have to deal with, right? And things will be
Yeah.
okay. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I know for myself, one of the big pieces of the journey was just within 5 years time, even back, of realizing like, oh shit, it's actually the darkness, it's actually these demons that I can come to love and honor, not let take over my life and run my life anymore. I can stand in that place of power and command my life, but it's these bits that I've disassociated, that I've disempowered, that I've not wanted to see about myself, that as I start to come to integrate and incorporate those and love those and honor them as just another facet and aspect of myself, that then things really kind of shot through the roof, kind of moving from that state of awareness and awakening and actual realization of myself and my being. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping that we can talk through a little bit of your journey, because I know in prior conversations we've kind of gone there a bit about some of the darkness. So maybe to just tee this off with a question, what would you say has been, if you can think of it in this fashion, what has been one of your greatest demons?
My greatest demon. Oh. Um, I would say I just like overall, what comes to mind when you say that is just overall judgment, self-judgment. Um, just being way too like overly critical. There's I don't know, yeah, I don't know if I call this like a specific demon, but but basically like we all have um I don't know, there's things within inside ourselves or stuff that maybe we don't like about ourselves, we think we don't like, that we're constantly like beating ourselves up for subconsciously, I think. And well, I say we, I know I definitely did this. Um, and from my own experience, and just like where it comes from, like I have this idea now that ultimately we all just want to be, loved and feel, connected and whole. And, within all of us, there's just this deep longing and craving for for love, basically. To feel, I don't know, wanted and appreciated. And from some of my own work in exploring just like some psychological concepts that there's within like sort of inner child work as well. Like there's parts of ourself that say when we were kids, it could be because of our relationship with a parent or particular parents, or our environment, teachers, I don't know, whoever it is, often like authoritative figures that we felt like for some reason we didn't get the love that we were always like craving when we were a younger human being. And then there's this thing that happens inside us, that happened in myself, for example, where I'd convinced myself there was things that was wrong with me, or things that I should be ashamed of or feel guilty about, that it was because of certain things about me, my character, stuff I did or didn't do, that was the reason I wasn't fully loved and appreciated and accepted within this world. And it wasn't until I came, I don't know, to uncover these things and the truth behind these ideas, and to develop more, I don't know, just a bit more softness and like love for myself, and forgiveness as well, that I could stop being so like overly critical, and secretly hating myself, like behind the scenes. um you know just a secret deep down hatred for me, um which, yeah,
How much of the world do you think carries that right now?
God, probably a lot, like a, yeah, I mean, from what we hear in this, uh I don't really call it like a time of sort of expanding consciousness amongst the planet and humanity, that it's lessening. But imagine in like the West, the for example in the UK and America, oh, I mean, loads, 70, 80, 90%, like the majority of people that like, if I had to, yeah, like compare in terms of like, if I was out in a day and I had to be like, I can tell that person really loves themselves. Like there's a light, they feel, you can feel it sometimes. Like people love themselves versus those who kind of like walk around with this secret, these demons.
Yeah.
And you can kind of sense there. Yeah, like it's, yeah, God, such a high percentage. And just from like statistics of, people these days with anxiety and depression and being on the rise, and like, especially amongst like men, like suicide rates like skyrocketing.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. Um, so it's got to be huge.
It's
Um,
interesting, isn't it, that, if we look at our current construct for society, and even if you're not a religious person, right, you're still, maybe you don't want to acknowledge this for yourself, but like open up your eyes and look. I mean, you're still religiously influenced in the fact that religion has, dominated and controlled society for so many years and has influenced thinking and political structures and its own structures and all the rest of it, to where, the dominant belief system in a good number of religions is that you're coming into the world like just fucked, like you're a sinner coming into the world, like you're this flawed being somehow already from the get-go, and you're constantly having to struggle to play catch up and to make yourself good and to make yourself right and to make yourself whole and all the rest of it. And
yeah.
so when we start off with that as our patterning, like no wonder why most of us are walking around in the world feeling like pieces of shit, when we've essentially been told that from the get-go, as little children. And also too, and what you were getting to in your conversation, I want to kind of weave back to is, as we're hearing those messages, I think we're also going through that process of looking externally for love. So we're looking to our parents for it, we're looking to society for it, we're looking to our friends for it, not knowing that the real core of it is actually developing that love for ourselves, right? And letting that be our guiding light, and essentially the only thing that we actually need in the world. So to kind
Yeah.
of weave back in there into your story, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah. So just, well, touching on that, like the looking for love out in the world. Like I've come to realize now, that that love is not out there, you know. It's there are no sources of love. Anything I want, you know, or I desire, none of it is out there in the world. It doesn't come from a person or a place or a thing or an animal or whatever it is. That it's that everything is um just reflecting, you know, yourself back to you. And so even say, for example, if it's like relationships with people, what I've noticed is just the more, you know, love I cultivate within myself and I project onto someone, you
Mm.
know. So like I found that the source of it is, you know, for example, if we talk about me and you, you know,
Mm.
like I love hanging out with you. I love having these conversations. You make me feel great. But I know it's um I don't know. I don't know if this sounds like narcissistic in a way, but like I know it's not because of you.
Yeah.
Like it's because I found a source of love in myself.
Yep.
And I'm like, right, like there's all this goodness, and I'm like, I'm gonna put it out there into this conversation with Leo.
Yep.
And therefore, you know, you feel it, and you're like, ah, oh, there's a bunch of love, you know, coming that way, and then like then it's reflected back to me in a way, and so you respond in the way of like based off what I'm putting out. But if there's this, yeah, you know, this hate, this guilt, this shame, all these low level emotions, and I, you know, and then I go and interact with the world in that way, the way that I'm gonna observe you or my mom or dad or partner or friends is gonna be through a lens of those emotions,
Yeah.
um, which is ultimately all what I've come to realize is an illusion. Like the real truth is that, you know, when we can see clear, when it's like the glasses, when there's no color to them, no tint, no nothing, they're clear. It's all love. It's all beautiful. It's all amazing. Like, but we just have all of these filters and, you know, colors and I don't know, stuff like, you know, dirt and specks and stuff on our senses that's
Yeah.
making us look at the world in a way and thinking it's not giving us love. But when we can clear it all up, we're like, oh, it's fucking wonderful.
Right. And it does shine as you clear it all up, it starts to shine through. I mean, it starts to come through. It's like you take something that's been constricted like this and start to allow it to kind of open, right? To where the
Yeah,
love can kind of pour through you. You can be that kind of conduit and that channel for your self love, your self generating love to move through you out into the world.
exactly. And so coming back to the demons, I best way I'm going to describe this is like I think there's ultimately one demon that shows itself then in many different ways, and that, you know, one demon is I guess coming back to this idea of, I don't know, self-hate, judgment,
Mhm.
um absence of love basically for ourselves,
Yep.
um which we discover, you know, in certain situations in life when people use the term triggers, for example. So we go out, we navigate the world, and we're in certain situations that make us feel really uncomfortable, you know, anxiety hits, or I don't know, whatever it might be, like the triggering things. And for some reason, being in that situation, there's stuff going on, um, which is like sending an alarm in the brain, um, being like, yeah, there's this part of yourself that's no good, um, and then yeah, it's what's ultimately like making us freak out. Whereas like the thing that um, the thing we're saying is no good about ourselves is just it's an illusion. Like it's a mistake.
Mm.
We've falsely identified, you know, an aspect or character of ourselves as being bad in some sense, because as a child, I think, you know, it comes down to this childhood thing, like you know, we just didn't understand. We didn't understand properly. Like,
Yeah.
we
And
didn't have,
we didn't have parents that understood or society
yeah.
that understood, like, you know.
And we can't blame ourselves for it, but our child brain then is like, right, you know, because of this part of me or whatever it is, like that's why I'm not getting the love and the attention and I'm not worthy. And therefore that's this bad thing about myself. And then we hold on to it and we condemn it, and until like I said, when we become adults and we can look back and reflect and do some of this work, whether it's on our own or with, you know, the support of professionals, that we can yeah, like rehash those situations and then come to realize like it's not like it's, I don't know, just to be able to forgive ourselves and love ourselves. Oh, a little dog here.
Hi, Shadow.
Sit down, bud. Um, yeah, I don't know, and just be like, um, the way I imagine it is like if I am, I don't know, if I'm a parent now and there's like a child like inside me,
Mhm.
and I can go back and I can like talk to him and be like, let's try and use like a real world example. Let's say for ages, for some reason, I know I'm amazing now, but I used to be like terrified of girls. So when I was younger, like I couldn't like talk to girls, didn't want to hang out with them. Gave me so much anxiety. Like I would freak out. Didn't know what to say. Like I think I like judged myself loads. Didn't think I was very like interesting or very low sense of like self-worth. I don't
Okay.
really know where that necessarily came from. But I realized that there's this part of myself that existed inside me that I was just always judging. Like, I thought I was boring. I thought I was unattractive. I thought I was, um, I don't know. Yeah, like I just don't know a bunch of nice stuff about myself. And I don't know, maybe sometimes we don't necessarily need to get to the root, but once we realize that anything that negative in a sense or unuseful that we're thinking about ourselves is ultimately an illusion,
Mm.
that I can then go back to that, child version of me who maybe had some experiences where I was like rejected by a girl, or there's certain situations where I felt like embarrassed and then held on to these ideas and then it became a part of my identity. I can go back and be like, no, like, hey, little buddy, like it's not, it's not, that's not the case. Like you just mistaken. There was some other stuff happening, that made people respond, or when everyone was laughing, they weren't laughing at you. It was like something else going on. Like as adults, we can see it with I don't know, a greater perspective, whereas the child was just very in that moment and saw it very like narrow-mindedly and thought it was all because of them and there's something wrong with them. And
Yeah.
we can almost go back and talk a little bit of sense into that child aspect of ourselves and be like, bro, like you are like little bud, you are perfect. There's nothing wrong with you. Like you're so handsome. You're so fun. You're so interesting. Like everyone wants to hang out with you. What are you talking about? And we can nurture this little child inside ourselves as if we were a parent in the real world, and how we'd want to speak to our own kids, to get them to see just how fucking incredible they are.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah, that point you just raised about talking with the inner child, it's in Tobias with the Crimson Circle work would talk about it as he would say it's the future is the past healed, which means that we can actually, and I just want to illustrate this for people that are listening if they haven't done some of this, that it's a possibility for you. This is legit. You can actually do this inner work of holding space and going back and talking with your younger selves and your little child selves, and just like Elliott sharing, it's all going to be okay. You're fantastic, you're amazing, you're incredible, like you're this grand being. You don't know it yet, but at some point you're going to, and like you're going to get through this and you're going to be stronger for it. And just kind of repatterning and reprogramming what that little child would have been experiencing in their kind of closed off experience of the world at that moment in time, and opening that back up. And through that process, that little child ends up getting healed, which then incorporates into your grander being and integrates right in terms of your another step towards your overall wholeness, your overall feeling of wholeness.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So unless you're going to go somewhere, my next step is I wanted to ask you, I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but you identify right now as a heterosexual male. Is that a fair statement?
That's fair statement.
Okay. So in your journey, have you experienced any have you gone around with any kind of sexual shame, any sexual guilt, any kind of sexual stuff? Because that's such a big part of our being is our sexuality, right? And our sexual expression. And it's so odd, isn't it, that it gets talked about so little in society, and even more so little in spiritual circles, which is very interesting if you put a pin
Yeah.
in that. But yeah, I'd love to know kind of what you've gone around in your own journey with sexuality.
Yeah. I used to feel a lot of, yeah, shame or guilt when it came to sex. Um, if I had to find like the root of that, I can think of maybe two things. Like one is uh I guess like the religious influence in culture, of like sex being like a sin, or not like sex itself, but that lust, to be lusty of people and want to do certain things or yeah, have certain kind of experiences. Um, and that yeah, that if you have certain kind of fantasies or something like, yeah, there's something wrong with you. Um, and you're dark and you're twisted and yeah, you're a fucking sinner. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Right. Yeah.
Um, also that combined with um I think maybe growing up with three sisters,
Mm,
and I remember just vividly like my dad telling me, I think it was like predominantly to stop me from like fighting them when they pissed me off.
sure.
He would tell me, he was like, women are delicate flowers. Like you need to be treat like be gentle with them.
Mm,
Um and treat them with respect, obviously. But this idea stuck in my mind as well. I was like, that say for example when it comes to sex, like I don't know, that getting too close to a girl or a woman is, I don't like, I'm overstepping a boundary in some sense. Like I
mm.
felt like I could never approach. Like I always had to just like wait there, be there and be like, if you are interested, you can come to me.
Was that
Because
just real quick? Was that because of the delicate thing? Like you felt that they were too susceptible or too delicate to where you had to
I
be
think
very
so, yeah.
cautious and
Just
careful?
absolutely, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um,
And isn't that interesting? Just as a side note there to highlight that, isn't that interesting how that just a little innocuous idea like that, right, can really
such a small
affect
thing.
us in our
Yeah.
behavior and in the way we interact with the
Exactly.
world, right? Yeah.
And then that combined with, what's it, this whole, I think how things have escalated a bit, with social media, Me Too movements, and
Mm,
I mean, there's a lot of validity behind, like stuff that goes on, and obviously women getting abused, but at the same time, but then men feeling like they can't do anything without being like publicly shamed, in front of the masses, for doing something or saying something wrong or being a little like flirty or whatever it is, and they're like, oh,
mm,
he, tried to abuse me, which often can be the case. Like those things happen, but then sometimes it gets massively just, I don't know, exploded out of nowhere, and especially in a world where, for example, say as from my understanding, most women they would prefer and enjoy having a man who's willing to embrace their masculinity, to make the first move, to take control of it, like an element of dominance, within the relationship or situation. Like there's something comforting about that,
mm,
for the feminine. But when I'm so afraid to take
mm,
that control, it's like I can't do it. I have to step back. And if
mm.
I was open to it, I was like, I would love for, some girls to, to want to do some stuff with. But none of them are coming to me because they want the man to come to them. And so I was like forever like waiting around and nothing happening. Um, and yeah, it's taken a long time. To be honest, it's probably only been within the last maybe 6 months that I've
Mm,
really uh been freeing myself within my own sexuality,
mm.
um to heal that aspect of myself and being like, no, like it's there's nothing wrong with it. Like it's yeah, it's just a creative form of human expression and pleasure, and something that's should be enjoyed, I believe, amongst
Yeah.
everybody. There's nothing sinful or shameful about it. If you have, whatever your fantasies are or weird like little kinks, there's someone else out there who probably wants to explore it with you.
Right.
um you're not forcing anything, on the wrong person that isn't interested in it. You find your match, you can explore what you want. That's the beauty of life. Like we're here just doing wild, weird shit together.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, forever, just this part of myself, there was like just so much shame, so much guilt. And um, I don't know how did I start to overcome that? I don't know. I think it just started with an acknowledgement that this was a part of myself I wanted to change, like that it was causing me pain.
Hmm.
Slowly things started to appear in my world that was like encouraging me to like branch out or feel a bit more okay about it. you know, hearing more people in, like, for example, podcasts talking about sexuality. And there's a guy called Aubrey Marcus. Have you heard of
Mhm.
him?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like talks about like getting your fuck on, or like your full fuck. And he's like talking about sex in a way. I was like, oh my God, can you say that? And then when I went to Costa Rica, for example, and spent some time in this town, and there's a big spiritual community there, and a lot of people are a lot much more open about their sexuality and a bit more like free love or more polyamorous relationships, for example. And then being exposed to other ideas for such a long time in my life, I was like I didn't even really, I heard of these things, but I didn't really think like people live that way. I was like, no, like
Mm.
monogamy is how you live your life. Like you're with a person, like you have sex with them, like, you know, try not to commit adultery,
Right.
stay faithful. But then there's like nowadays, like there's always different types of, I don't know, sexual orientations and preferences and ways people live their life. And like there's no right or wrong. There's just whatever people like. But
Yeah.
to be brought up in a world where I'm just so narrow-minded with thinking like the world is only, you know, when it comes to sexuality, like just has to be one particular way. Um, yeah. And I guess part of freeing ourselves sometimes I think comes down to like realizing come back to that, there's no right or wrong. There is no like definitive objective truth
Yeah.
in the world. It's
It's a
just whatever
big, that's
you
a big one, isn't it? Getting to that spot where you recognize, like, oh, wow, there is no right or wrong. It's just what energetically feels good to me, what enhances my being versus what puts me in a negative state and starts to cause me to withdraw or contract or have that part of the experience, right? But that neither of it's right or wrong. It's just experience. I'm curious if
yeah.
you can speak to Elliot, if there's anything there to share just with your own sexuality with yourself and how you've seen that kind of evolve, or maybe it hasn't. I don't want to put words in your mouth again, but just love of your, not self love as a concept, yes, but sex with yourself. Like, how has that evolved, or how have you gotten to, or where are you at with that?
In regards to, what do you mean? Playing with myself?
Yeah, sex with yourself, like making love
Okay.
to yourself, like being
Uh,
your own best lover.
yeah. How has that changed? Um, if anything, I think it's like, we're done. That's a great question. It makes me think. Um, so what first comes to mind is me thinking like it's encouraged me to almost be less sexual with myself in a
Mm,
way, because I felt like because I wasn't able to be sexually expressive with other beings for such a long time because of this fear, shame, guilt, that the only person I could really be sexual with was myself. And so I was fine, really, I don't know, exploring that and myself and what I like. Um, but now I'm in a position where I'm like, oh, like I don't just have to have this experience with myself. I can
mm,
share this experience with other beings, you know, that want to have these experiences too. Um, it's almost taken a bit of like discipline. Well, definitely taking a lot of, discipline to be like, right, let's, fucking get off, just the porn or just masturbating to myself and, be more proactive, going out dating people and building other relationships and then exploring things with other people, because it became such a habit in a way that I was like, if I want to be sexual, I don't know, that I would turn to myself to be sexual first rather than out to the world to express my sexuality.
okay.
Mm.
How do you feel about how do you feel about having sex with yourself or playing with yourself or masturbating? Is there any guilt or shame remnants in there, or were you always, or have you gotten to a place where you're like, oh yeah, like it's not going to kill me, it's not going to put hair on my hands, or like whatever those old wives tale expressions are if you play with yourself too much, right? Like,
Um, no, it's fine. I've gone through different periods. Uh, like there was a point, for example, where I realized that, watching a lot of porn, can really desensitize you to things, and then you just need like progressively more intense porn to watch to get turned on. I was like, maybe this isn't so healthy. And, you know, taking a step away from that and learning how to, like, for example, use my imagination a bit more, you know, if I'm playing with myself, doing things. There was times where I also explored, for example, was, you know, more deep into exploring spirituality and spending time with people from different, you know, religious faiths and, you know, backgrounds that I came across. What was it called? Like semen retention,
Oh,
or
sure.
there's like yeah,
WAP.
basically. What's it?
WAP.
WAP? No
I think
fap?
WAP or no FAP. That's what it is. No FAP.
WAP is wet ass pussy.
All right, Cardi. No, with yourself and masturbating for a male, I think it's no FAP, right? Not
Yeah.
flapping it, not flapping it.
And so there was a time where I, you know, then I thought that I really shouldn't be doing anything, because if I needed to like advance my spiritual development,
Mhm.
then I needed to stay away from all that. There's, you know, this concepts around, I think, I'm not sure like I don't really know what's real or not, but where there's the ideas that, you know, that by um cultivating the power of our own seed and not, you know, ejaculating and letting that, you know, creative life force out, that it helps raise our kundalini energy and open our third eye and chakras and different stuff. And I think, I don't know, maybe that did help. It was part of it. But then past a certain point, after I did that, you know, for a long time, well, not one whole long time. There was like periods, a few weeks, you know, here, a few months there. I got horny. I was like, I gotta fucking do something. I was like, I caved, and then I was like, I gotta get back on it again. But eventually got to a point where I realized like I just need to be, you know, I need to take charge of my own life and decide whether something makes me happy or not. And I can, you know, I can either, you know, continue keep living in fear and being like, oh, you know, maybe I shouldn't, you know, because I need to evolve more spiritually. Like I need to be doing these other things, people telling me, but there's always advice and opinions and stuff coming from different places.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, we just need to be our own guiding light. And I was like, what do I want? And I was like, I want to jack off right now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do it. I don't
Yeah.
give a fuck what you tell me about semen retention, or that I'm going to not evolve spiritually as some being, or if I'm going to hell or whatever it is. It's like, I want this, so I'm going to do it. And there is such a, yeah, sense of like empowerment and freedom that
Mhm.
comes from deciding to take charge of our own life and decide what is best for us, and not let anybody tell us, you know, whether it's society or our friends or our parents, which is often, you know, the hardest as well. Like,
Yeah.
no, I'm my own being. I'm going to decide what's best for me.
That's
Um,
that's such a crucial point there, and I just want to really emphasize that for a second, Elliot, because even, you know, if you can imagine the audiences that may tune into this, even in the spiritual circles, right, there's still so much of this dogma, even in the new age circles, and even in the more enlightened spiritual circles, there's still all this dogma around it has to be this way, and it has to be this practice, and it has to be this ritual, and you can't play with yourself, and you can't, like, there's just all of these rules and constrictions to where, like you mentioned, when you finally start to have that awareness and get to that place where you just have to own it for yourself, you have to listen to the internal teacher of yourself and listen inward versus all of these other external parties, right? That's a huge shift and a huge place to really
yeah,
start to kind of claim your energy again.
big time, big time. And
Yeah.
I learned that especially through uh spending time with different faiths, for example, different religions and cultures. Like um I was exploring, you know, life and God, and trying to understand what this concept of, you know, God is, and was, you know, attacking it from different angles through spending time with the Hare Krishnas and the Jews and the Mormons. I can't remember. Christians, Hindus, Sikhs, and trying, you know, looking at all these different places, and they all have different, um, uh, what do you call it? I don't know, practices and things that you should do or shouldn't do. You should eat halal. You should not, you know, eat meat at all. You should, um, I don't know, X, Y, Z, all this other stuff. I was like, you know, what do you listen to? Who do you follow? Um, and I have a profound respect for, yeah, like all the different philosophies and religions and beliefs. And I see that there's something within all of them, which is, you know, they're all pursuing sort of, universal truth in a sense, but so many of them have become so misguided because they're all, not all, so many people within these sects are worshiping something outside of themselves in a way. And as long as you think there's something outside of yourself that has power over you or can condemn you or cause you harm, or that there's certain things you should or shouldn't be doing, otherwise there's going to be consequences by some external being or force or whatever it is, that then we're living in fear ultimately, and we can never really fully truly be ourselves and express ourselves. And it wasn't until I realized that through reading their books and their scriptures and these religions, I was like, wait a minute, like this whole God thing is like, and through like meditations, what I was like, it's in me, it is me, like it's inside me. I am God.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I was like, whoa, fuck. Like, so I get to make my own decisions. Like I get to decide. And then even then, like there's still been periods, say over the last year or so where I was like, oh, like am I fucked? Because I've been thinking that I'm God, like, and that's blasphemy. Like, and the actual God out there is gonna smite me because I'm you know what I mean?
Right.
It's all like toing and froing and back and forth by, trying to allow myself to accept my own divinity,
Yeah.
until I finally did. And like with a lot of apprehension, almost like every day, kind of going out there and being like, right, I'm God. Is anyone going to smite me? No, it's and the more I do, the more like confidence I believe. I'm like, right, I am my own divine being that gets to make my own decisions and live how I want. And as far as I'm aware, no one's like throwing lightning bolt fucking at me to be like, no, you're wrong. So
Yeah.
I've accepted that to be my truth. And yeah, it just feels so much more freeing and empowering, like I say, to finally realize that.
Yeah, ditto. I've had that experience as well, and it's interesting, isn't it? You could talk with an atheist, and they would maybe come from the standpoint that they have no religious conditioning. They don't believe, and all the rest of it. But really, if you were to unpack them and unpack their psyche as it's been molded by humanity currently, you find that it's just as conditioned as a lot of people. In the sense that we are kind of this byproduct of this religious culture that's been going on for at least the last couple thousand years, and to really, in my own journey, it's taken this, like, you take a step away from it and you're like, oh, okay, cool, like I got all this out of me, and then you're like, oh shit, there's this whole other layer to it, like let me back out of that and get that out of me, and then it's like, okay, am I good? Oh no, wait, now there's this other layer, like it's
Yeah,
really
exactly.
deep, it
And you
goes
keep
so
noticing,
deep.
it's like you think you're free, you think you're thinking for yourself, but then there's like you notice yourself doing stuff, and it's like, oh, because there's more conditioning, there's more conditioning, there's more
Yeah.
conditioning. We keep building back, and like, yeah, who knows how far it's gonna go. But as long as we continue that process of, you know, peeling back those layers and removing the conditions and the blocks and freeing ourselves, that process of just continuously freeing ourselves, I think is great. Because like I speak now as if I'm a completely free being, like I make all my own decisions, whereas like I
Right.
definitely don't. I'm still massively conditioned by
Right.
society and family and friends and whatever it is, but way less so than I used to be.
Precisely. Yep. Hey, so okay, so for this, let's put this is round one if you're okay with it, and maybe if you'd be okay with it doing a round two at some point. Yeah,
Absolutely.
because what I wanted to kind of leave with a teaser with, I know from our experiences and talking in the past, you've got some really significant trials that you've gone through. Some of your part of the journey has been, deep bouts of depression and kind of working through your sense of self and these questions of who am I and what does it mean to be out in the world and what does it mean to be a part of life and that type of thing, which I really do want to help get out there and share with the world. So if we could do that maybe in a round two.
Absolutely. I'll be very excited for that. We
Okay.
can do round two, we can do round three, how many rounds do you
Cool.
want?
Right on. Hey, I just want to say thank you so much, Elliott, for coming to the table today and just, bringing your beautiful self and yeah, just affirm. Thank you for sharing yourself with the world. And we have these kind of conversations and we never know who it's going to touch or who's going to observe it, but we put out in the world knowing that the light does the work, and yeah, and the love, and thanks for bringing the love.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for creating this space for, me to be able to do so. And for anyone else who wants to do so for that matter as well. It's liberating being able to share and, talk about these concepts with you.
Ditto.
If you'd like to share your journey of awakening, please visit awakeintheworld.org.